I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror, wearing a red dress that cost me 2 weeks' salary, getting ready for a date with a man named Tyler, a safe, boring stockbroker. But in 12 hours, I would be sitting in a car with blood on my hands, next to the most dangerous man in New York City, the same man who just told me he would burn this entire city down if anyone ever touched me again. My name is Lily Morgan. 6 months ago, I was just an assistant who made excellent coffee. I had rules: never fall for your boss, never get involved with dangerous men, and never, ever wear red on a first date. I broke every single one of them. This is the story of how one accidental text message destroyed my perfectly planned life, and how the wrong man turned out to be the only right choice I ever made. But here's the thing about falling for a man like Lorenzo Vitali. Once you're in, there's no way out. And honestly, I stopped looking for the exit a long time ago. This story will show you that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead us to where we truly belong, and that real love often comes disguised as the one thing we were trying to avoid. CTA, Loi Kyugai. If you've ever felt trapped between what's safe and what makes your heart race, stay until the end. And if this story moves you, let me know in the comments which moment surprised you the most. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Now let me take you back to the moment everything started to unravel. The espresso machine in Lorenzo Vitali's office hissed. The sound cut through the air, thick with the smell of coffee and expensive leather. I was preparing his third cup of the morning. For 6 months, I had worked for him, a position that felt less like employment and more like a constant struggle. I knew he was there before I saw him. He moved without a sound. In a world like this, power was the only thing that kept you safe, and I wondered if I would ever feel that way. "The Calabrese file is on your desk," I said, my back still to him. "And I already removed the clause about the harbor contracts. You should keep listening to see if I made the right choice." I did not ask for his permission. I knew I was right. I heard him settle into his chair behind me, the sound of fabric and the click of his expensive pen. "Lily, you are feeling defiant this morning. It is 3 in the afternoon, Mr. Vitali." I prepared the coffee exactly his way. No sugar, served in a specific cup from his grandmother, the one with delicate gold trim. Then I turned to face the man behind the desk. Lorenzo looked like a king on his throne. His dark suit was tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders. His face was all sharp angles and aristocratic lines, like a statue from ancient Rome. But his eyes were what always held me. They were the color of a storm and missed nothing. Those eyes could see every flicker of doubt, every hidden thought. I felt them on me now as I walked across the room, a physical weight on my skin. Lorenzo noticed everything about me. He knew I twisted my grandmother's ring when I was nervous. He knew I bit my lip when I was focused. He knew the way I tilted my head just before delivering bad news. "The meeting with the Rossi brothers is at 7, I said. I placed the espresso on his desk, maybe a little too hard. A single dark drop stained the wood. "Marco is ready to drive you. I will not be here." He was reaching for the cup, but his hand stopped. "I am sorry? I am leaving early today." I fought to keep my voice even, professional. My heart started beating its familiar frantic rhythm whenever his full attention was on me. "I have plans." "Plans?" He said the word like it was from another language. He tapped a finger on the desk, a rare sign of his annoyance. This was a man who was always in complete control. "What kind of plans are they?" "They are personal." An uncomfortable silence filled the huge office. Behind him, the city of Manhattan sparkled in the afternoon light. It was an empire of steel and money, and from here, it all belonged to him. Everyone knew who Lorenzo really was, but no one ever spoke it aloud. People valued their lives too much. I found out the truth 2 months after I started working here. I had overheard a discussion I was never meant to hear. The smart move would have been to quit, to disappear from his dangerous world. Instead, I came into his office the next day, put his coffee on his desk, and spoke. The Martinelli shipment is coming on Tuesday. You should be there. He just stared at me for what felt like an eternity. You are either very brave or very foolish, Miss Morgan. I am practical, Mr. Vitali, and I make very good coffee. Something changed between us in that moment. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. So I kept my job. I kept his secrets, and I became addicted to the chaos of his life. Now, he rose and walked around the desk with his usual predator's grace. Personal plans, he said again. A hint of his Italian accent colored the words. With who? That is none of your business. His jaw tightened. Everything about you is my business, Lily. You work for me. I work for you from 9 until 6. My life after that is my own. I crossed my arms over my chest. It was a defensive move, and I hated that he saw it. His eyes followed the motion before returning to my face. He was standing too close now. I could smell his cologne, a custom scent of bergamot and cedar that likely cost a fortune. I could see the thin, white scar along his jawline, a reminder of a violent past. You are wearing perfume, he said quietly. You never do that for the office. My pulse quickened. I had used a little of my favorite vanilla and jasmine scent this morning. The fact he noticed such a small change sent a strange feeling through me that was not fear. I just felt like it today. His eyes narrowed. And your hair is down. My hand went to the waves I had spent an hour styling. I hardly ever made such an effort for work. I have a date, Mr. Vitali. Is that allowed? Or will I need to get your written approval for a personal life? The air in the office grew colder. Lorenzo's face remained a mask of control, but I saw a dangerous flicker in his gray eyes. A date. His voice was like silk stretched over a blade of steel. Yes, a date. It is when two people who are not boss and employee spend time together. I instantly regretted my sharp tone. After 6 months, I knew it was thrilling to challenge him, but it was never smart. Who is this lucky person? His name is Tyler. I met him at Sophia's party. I reached for my purse on a nearby table, suddenly needing to escape the crushing weight of his attention. If you will excuse me, I have to go home and get ready. I was only 3 steps away when his voice stopped me. Ready for what? For dinner, Mr. Vitali. It is not polite to show up naked. A muscle in his jaw twitched. That was the only sign of his anger. You know what I am asking. I turned back, frustrated by his questions. For 6 months, I had followed his orders, accepted his criticism, and cherished his rare praise. For 6 months, I had watched a parade of beautiful women walk through this office on his arm. For 6 months, I had pretended I felt nothing when he stood this close. I felt nothing when his hand brushed mine. I felt nothing when he watched me late at night with an unreadable look on his face. I am wearing something nice, I answered, my voice sharp. Something that helps me feel good about myself. Is that a problem? Or do you get to approve what I wear now, too? Lorenzo was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Be careful, Lily. There are bad men in this world. The genuine concern in his voice surprised me. My anger softened just a little. I will be okay. Tyler is just a stockbroker. Very normal. Stockbrokers can be dangerous people too. Not as dangerous as others I know. The words came out before I could stop them. I regretted them when his expression went completely cold. 5 o'clock, he said. His voice was all business now. Do not be late in the morning. I just nodded and ran. My heels clicked on the marble floor outside his office. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my coat. Adrenaline pumped through me, mixed with another feeling I refused to name. Lucia, the receptionist, gave me a knowing look. Problems in the palace? This is not a palace, I mumbled, pushing the elevator button again and again. He is just a controlling boss with no concept of personal space. Lucia just smiled. If that is what you think. The 43-floor ride down gave me a moment to breathe. This was insane. Lorenzo Vitali was my employer. He was a dangerous man. He lived in a world of violence I wanted nothing to do with. The fact that he made my heart race was just an inconvenience I could not afford. Tyler was safe. He was normal. Maybe a little boring, but boring was a good thing. Boring meant a future without investigations or wars between powerful families. Boring meant I was not constantly standing on the edge of a cliff, torn between the fear of falling and the urge to leap. My home was a small one-bedroom apartment in Queens. It was a 40-minute train ride from Lorenzo's Tower on Fifth Avenue. I took a quick shower, trying to wash away the tension of our argument. The red dress I had bought last week hung on my closet door. It was an impulse buy, a gift to myself. The silk fabric was a deep red that complemented my skin. The neckline was simple, but the dress fit my body perfectly before flaring out around my knees. I had never owned a dress like this. I looked at the woman in the mirror and did not recognize her. My hair fell in soft curls, and light makeup sharpened my features. The red fabric made me feel like a different person, someone confident and beautiful. I looked like I could belong in Lorenzo's world. I could walk into any high-end restaurant, and every head would turn. The idea was both terrifying and exciting. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Tyler. He was running about 15 minutes late. He would meet me at Regis at 8 o'clock. I sent a quick reply and picked up my bag. A knot tightened in my stomach, but I tried to ignore it. This was a good thing, a normal thing. This is what other people did. They dated nice, predictable men who did not make them feel like they were always walking on a razor's edge. Tyler picked an expensive Italian restaurant with low lights and white tablecloths. I got there first, and the hostess led me to a small table in the back. The dining room was alive with the sound of conversations from the dinner crowd. I ordered a glass of wine and settled in to wait. I watched the people around me to pass the time. There were couples celebrating special nights. There were business meetings coming to an end. A table of women shared appetizers and laughed together. These were normal people living their normal lives. They had no idea another world existed just below the surface of theirs. A world where men like Lorenzo Vitali could end a life with a single phone call. I was so deep in my own thoughts, I nearly missed Tyler when he arrived, looking rushed and apologetic. "Lily, I am so sorry. An emergency came up at work." He was handsome in a very standard way, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a square jaw. His suit was expensive, but it was not tailored for him. His smile was warm, but it held no danger. He was the definition of a safe choice. "It is no problem," I said, smiling back. I just sat down. The date began smoothly. Tyler was polite and asked about my job. I gave him vague answers, because I learned long ago not to mention Lorenzo's name. He told funny stories about his own career. He was the perfect first date, attentive and respectful. So why did I keep glancing at my phone? Why did my heart race every time a man with dark hair walked by our table? Why did I feel like I was cheating on someone just by being here? "You seem a little distracted," Tyler noted as he poured more wine into my glass. "Is everything all right?" "I am fine," I lied. "It was just a long day at the office. Your boss sounds like a difficult person." Tyler leaned back in his chair, and his expression changed to something more serious. "Long hours, a lot of pressure. It must be hard on you." A small alarm went off in my head, but I ignored it. "It has its moments. What exactly does your company do?" "You said something about imports." His question sounded innocent, but his gaze was sharp and focused. "All sorts of things, mostly international business." "That must be fascinating, dealing with so many different countries." He smiled, but the smile did not touch his eyes. "I have always wanted to work in that field. Maybe you could share some inside information." The alarm bells in my head got louder. "I am just a secretary, Tyler. I organize files and get coffee. It is not very exciting." His hand covered mine on the table. His grip was a little too firm. "I have a feeling you are more than that. A woman who works for a man like Lorenzo Vitali must know many interesting secrets." My body went cold. How do you know who my boss is? Sophia told me, Tyler said. But he said it too fast. His thumb drew circles on my hand. It should have been a comforting gesture, but it made my skin crawl. She said you worked for a powerful businessman. Sophia does not know where I work. My words were flat and empty. I had always been careful not to tell my friends about my job. An instinct warned me that being connected to Lorenzo Vitali was a dangerous secret to share. So, I will ask you again. How do you know who I work for? Tyler's pleasant mask fell away, showing the cold expression beneath it. Look, Lily, I think we started this the wrong way. I think our date is finished. I started to get up, but his hand squeezed mine, holding me down. Do not cause a scene, he whispered, his fake smile back in place for anyone who might be watching. Just listen to me for 1 minute. Let go of my hand. My family has some business with Mr. Vitali. Nothing important, just some similar interests in the import business. His eyes were now hard and calculating. We thought it would be helpful to have a friendly contact on the inside. You are a smart woman, Lily. You are smart enough to know how the world works. My heart was pounding in my chest. You planned this entire thing. The party, the way we met, all of it was a lie. I call it strategic networking. His thumb continued to draw those awful circles on my skin. We are not asking for much, just a little information now and then. What meetings does he have? Who comes to the office? Things like that. In exchange, we would pay you very well for your trouble. 6 months ago, I might have been foolish enough to be flattered by his attention. 6 months ago, I did not know the things I know today. 6 months ago, I had not spent my days watching Lorenzo work. I had not learned to see the small signs that came before violence. I did not understand the rules of his world. And one of the most important rules was that betrayal always had a price. You want me to spy on Lorenzo Vitali? I kept my voice steady, even though fear and anger were fighting inside me. Do you understand how incredibly stupid that idea is? We are asking you to be smart. Your boss is not a good person, Lily. He is a dangerous and violent man. Sooner or later, someone will take him down. You do not want to be near him when that happens. Tyler leaned in closer and spoke in a low voice. We are giving you a way to escape. We can give you money, protection, and a new life somewhere safe. I stared at him. This handsome man had built an elaborate trap that looked like a romance. Who is we exactly? Are you people who can protect me from Vitali when he learns I know too much? Or are you people who will use me and then get rid of me when I am no longer needed? I pulled my hand back so hard that I knocked over my wine glass. The red liquid stained the white tablecloth like a pool of blood. The meaning was not lost on me. I have to go. I stood up, and this time Tyler did not stop me. But his voice chased me across the room. Think about it, Lily. You are not one of them. You do not fit in that world. Take the safe option before it is too late. I grabbed my bag and rushed to the door, struggling to breathe. The hostess gave me a worried look as I hurried past. I could not stop. I could not think. I could not understand what just happened. Tyler knew my boss. He knew Lorenzo's name. He had researched me enough to create this entire fake meeting. That meant other people could know about me too. They could be watching me, waiting for a chance to use me to hurt Lorenzo. The cool night air hit me as I ran out of the restaurant. I stood on the sidewalk, trying to get my bearings and remember how to breathe. My phone vibrated in my bag. It was probably Tyler with another message. I did not look at it. The smart move would be to go home, lock all my doors, and start looking for a new job. In the morning, I would walk into Lorenzo's office and resign. I would get out before Tyler's family war caught me in the middle of it. That was the smart move. But as I stood there on the New York City sidewalk, the red dress feeling more like a bullseye than armor, I remembered something Lorenzo told me. We had been working late one night. We were talking about a competitor who had tried to steal one of Lorenzo's deals. Predators can smell fear, he said, without looking up from his papers. The second you show it, you become the prey. You have to decide if you are going to run or if you are going to show your teeth. At the time, I thought he was just talking about business. Now I knew it was the code he lived his life by. I took out my phone and scrolled past Tyler's name until I found the number I was only supposed to use in an emergency. Lorenzo put it in my phone during my first week of work. He told me to call if I ever felt like I was in danger. I had laughed then, and I called him paranoid. I was not laughing anymore. He picked up on the first ring. Lily. His voice was different from how it sounded at work. It was deeper, more personal. It sounded like he had been expecting me to call. Where are you? Regis on West 54th Street. I need. My voice broke, and I hated how weak I sounded. Can you send a car for me? I do not want to take the subway. There was silence for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then he said, Do not move. I am 5 minutes away. But he had already ended the call. I waited under the awning of the restaurant, shivering even though the night was warm. 5 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up to the sidewalk. The driver's side window came down. It was not one of Lorenzo's drivers. It was Lorenzo himself. He was wearing the same dark suit from earlier, but his tie was loose, and the top button of his shirt was undone. His hair was messy, as if he had been running his hands through it. When his gray eyes met mine, his expression was absolutely furious. Get in the car, Lily. I did as he said and slid into the passenger seat. The leather was warm, and the car smelled like his cologne. Lorenzo did not drive away. He just sat there, looking straight ahead. His hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard that his knuckles had turned white. What happened? His voice was terrifyingly calm. Did he lay a hand on you? Not in a physical way. I struggled to find the words. Lorenzo, he knew exactly who you are. He knew that I work for you. He tried to get me to spy for his family. A muscle in Lorenzo's jaw twitched. What family? He never said the name. He just told me they shared business interests with you in imports. Tyler who? His eyes met mine. What is his last name? I do not know. I thought we met at Sophia's party. The pieces began clicking together. Each new one was worse than the last. The whole thing was a performance, was not it? He chose me specifically. Lorenzo was silent for a second, thinking it over. Then he said, Tyler Monroe, early 30s, blonde hair, works at Castani Financial. How did you know that? Because I have been watching him follow you for 2 weeks. He finally let go of the steering wheel and turned to face me completely. His father is Vincent Monroe. They control the waterfront unions. They have been trying to force their way into my shipping business for months. My stomach felt hollow. You knew? You knew someone was following me and you failed to tell me? I had my own person watching him. You were never in any danger, Lily. Until I went on a date with him. That is why I was sitting 3 tables away the entire evening, waiting for him to reveal his plan. Lorenzo's voice became quiet. Did you truly believe I would let you enter a restaurant with a stranger, without knowing precisely who he was and what his goal was? I just stared at him. I felt torn between rage at his arrogance and a shameful sense of relief that he was there. You followed me. I kept you safe. There is a difference. You had no right. I have every right. He moved closer, and the car suddenly felt incredibly small. You work for me, Lily. You are a part of my organization. That makes you my responsibility. I am not some possession you can monitor like a delivery. No, you are a liability. The words rushed out of him with a rare lack of control. You walk around in red dresses and look like that. You attract the attention of every man within a 50-mile radius, totally unaware that you are a target for anyone who wants to hurt me. The silence that came next was overwhelming. Lorenzo looked as if he wanted to take the words back. His expression changed from anger to a careful blankness in an instant. But it was too late. The words hung in the air between us. Looking like what? I asked in a soft voice. His jaw became tight. Lily, do not. You said looking like that. Like what exactly? Like you are fully aware of the power you have. He pulled away, creating space between us as his control returned. Like you are trying to make every man who looks at you lose his mind. My heart was doing odd things inside my chest. It was racing and then skipping, forgetting its normal rhythm. And are you insane? Lorenzo did not reply for a long time. Then, instead of answering, he started the car. He pulled into the street with a bit more force than was needed. We drove through Manhattan in a heavy silence as the city lights blurred past the windows. I should have been thinking about the danger I had just avoided. I should have considered Tyler's offer and what it meant for rival families to be interested in me. Instead, my mind was fixed on the way Lorenzo's hands gripped the steering wheel. I focused on the muscle jumping in his jaw and the deliberate way he refused to look at me. "Where are we going?" I finally asked when I saw we were going uptown, away from Queens. "My place. We have to talk, and I do not trust the security at your apartment. My apartment is perfectly safe. Your apartment has locks that a teenager could open. Your neighbors would not even notice if someone dragged you out screaming." He made a sharp turn. "You will stay with me tonight. Tomorrow, we can talk about a more permanent solution." A permanent solution? I turned in my seat to look at him. "Lorenzo, I am not moving into your penthouse because one man tried to recruit me. One man from a family that now knows you are close to me. One man who will definitely try again, or he will send someone else. One man who proved that you are no longer safe living by yourself in a neighborhood with poor security." He was right. As much as I disliked admitting it, Tyler knew where I lived. He probably knew my daily schedule. The idea of going back to my apartment, of lying in bed and wondering if every noise was an intruder, made my skin crawl. "Just for tonight," I agreed. "Then we find a real solution. We will see." His building was one of those exclusive skyscrapers where the staff knew your name and the elevator needed a special key. We went up to the top floor without speaking. The tension between us was thick. I had never been to Lorenzo's home. I never thought I would be. It felt strangely personal to cross the line from our professional lives into this one. The penthouse was everything I expected and nothing like I imagined. It had sleek, modern furniture and giant windows with a view that cost more than my parents' house. The kitchen was filled with professional appliances that looked like they had never been used. But there were also personal things. Family pictures were on the fireplace mantel. A worn leather chair sat by the window. Bookshelves were filled with books in English and Italian. "The guest room is down the hall, second door, on the left," Lorenzo said. He took off his suit jacket and loosened his tie even more. "There are extra toiletries in the bathroom. I will send someone for your clothes tomorrow." "Lorenzo, we should both try to sleep." He turned and walked toward what I guessed was his bedroom. "It has been a long night." "Wait." The word escaped me before I could stop it. He stopped but did not turn around. "Why were you so angry? When I told you about the date, you seemed, I do not know." "Furious." His shoulders grew stiff. "I was not angry. You were. You still are." I stepped toward him. "And you were at the restaurant. You said you were 5 minutes away, but you were there the whole time. You were watching everything." Lorenzo slowly turned to face me. In the dim light of his apartment, with his tie loose and his careful control gone, he looked different. He seemed less like a cold crime boss and more like a man who had reached his limit. "Yes," he said plainly. "I was watching." "Why?" "Because I am apparently a masochist who likes to torture himself." A bitter smile appeared on his lips. "Because watching you prepare for a date with another man was a unique kind of hell. But watching you actually go on that date would have been worse. Because I have spent 6 months trying to tell myself that my feelings for you are just physical, just an inconvenient desire. And it is clear that I am a terrible liar, even to myself." The confession stayed in the air between us. It was raw, honest, and terrifying. "You cannot say things like that," I whispered. "You are my boss." "I know." You are dangerous. I know that too. This is a horrible idea. Probably the worst one I have ever had. He took one step closer, and then another, until we were almost touching. But I am finished with pretending, Lily. I am done pretending that I do not notice you every time you enter a room. I am done pretending it does not drive me insane when other men look at you. I am done pretending I did not want to commit murder tonight when I saw Tyler Monroe put his hands on you. My breathing stopped. Lorenzo, I told myself I would maintain my distance. I swore I would be professional, that you deserved someone normal, someone safe, someone who would not pull you into my world. His hand rose, floating near my face but not quite making contact. And then you started working for me 6 months ago with your sharp words and sharper intelligence. You were not impressed by my reputation at all. You rolled your eyes at my commands like I was just some annoying manager. Do you have any idea what that did to me? His hand finally touched me, his fingers tracing my jaw with a soft touch. I have been with beautiful women, sophisticated women, women who understood the rules of my world and played the game well. His thumb moved across my lower lip, and I trembled. None of them ever called me dramatic in front of my own men. None of them ever stole my coffee. None of them ever looked at me the way that you do, as if I am both the most irritating man on the planet and also someone you might care about, against your own better judgment. I do not. I began to say, but the lie faded because he was right. God help me, he was completely right. When did you know? I asked instead. That you had feelings? The day you learned what I really do. His expression became regretful. You came in that morning, put my coffee on my desk, and brought up the Martinelli shipment as if you were talking about the weather. No fear, no judgment, just cold, hard practicality. I knew right then that you were going to be the end of me. I remembered that day, the rush I felt making that choice, deciding to stay instead of to run away. I should have left. Yes, he said. You absolutely should have. But you did not. And every day that you stayed, every time you argued against my orders, every moment you saw me as a person instead of a monster. He stopped, shaking his head. I was lost long before I knew I was falling. That confession should have made me run. This was Lorenzo Vitali, a man whose name made other men nervous, who ran an empire based on violence and fear. Being with him meant choosing a life of danger, of always checking over my shoulder, of never feeling completely safe. But standing there in his penthouse, with his hand holding my face like I was a precious thing, I could not recall why safety ever mattered so much. This is crazy, I whispered. We hardly know each other. I know that you take your coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar. I know you chew on your thumbnail when you feel nervous. I know you phone your mother every Sunday morning at 9. You weep during commercials for animal shelters and laugh at the most awful puns. I know you have a photograph of your grandmother in a desk drawer that you touch for courage. His other hand rose to frame my face. I know you, Lily Morgan, far better than you realize. And I knew him, I understood then. I knew he read Italian spy novels when he could not sleep. I knew he liked his espresso dark and bitter, just like his sense of humor. He had a scar on his side from a knife fight when he was 17, and the death of his mother had nearly broken him. He gave money anonymously to literacy charities, and he once paused a corporate meeting to help a lost little girl find her parents. Beneath that cold surface was a man with a devastating capacity for tenderness. I am afraid, I confessed. You have every right to be. This is not a children's story, Lily. My life is filled with danger. My enemies are merciless. Being near me paints a target on your back that will never fade. His thumbs gently stroked my cheekbones. But I am also done pretending I can stay away from you. I am tired of watching you from the other side of the office, imagining how it would feel to touch you, to kiss you, to hear you speak my name without that professional tone in your voice. Lorenzo, I whispered, and his eyes grew dark. Like that, he said, his voice rough. Exactly like that. The first kiss he gave me was tentative, almost a question. His lips just barely met mine, offering me every chance to move away. But I did not. I leaned into him instead, and all the gentleness vanished. His hands sank into my hair, tilting my head back as he kissed me like a starving man. It was as if 6 months of holding back had finally shattered. I clutched his shirt, pulling him nearer, losing myself in the taste of him. He tasted of risk and wanting, and everything I had told myself I did not desire. His hands moved over my back, his fingers finding the zipper on my red dress, and I arched against his touch. "This dress," he breathed against my lips. "Do you have any clue what you did to me when I saw you in this dress?" "Tell me," I dared him, and his eyes lit up with a dark promise. "Later. For now, I want to get it off you." He guided me backward toward the bedroom, and our lips never separated. The room was dim, lit only by the city lights pouring through the windows, but it did not matter. The only thing that mattered was Lorenzo's hands on my skin, his mouth leaving a trail of fire down my throat, and the way he said my name like it was both a prayer and a curse. The zipper on the red dress slid open with a soft sound. Cool air touched my warm skin, followed by Lorenzo's hands, which were warm and possessive. The dress dropped to my feet. I stood there in nothing but my underwear and heels, feeling exposed yet powerful under his intense gaze. "Beautiful," he whispered, and the pure awe in his voice made me shiver. "So beautiful it is painful to look at you." I reached for his shirt, my fingers clumsy with the buttons. He assisted me, pulling it off with impatience. In the faint light, I saw the scar he had mentioned, along with others whose stories I did not know. They were proof of a violent existence, of dangers he had overcome. I traced one with the tip of my finger and felt him tremble. "This is a part of who you are," I said quietly. "But it is not all you are." For a moment, I saw something unguarded in his eyes. Then he was kissing me again, and I could no longer think. There was only feeling. His hands, his mouth, the sensation of our skin together. He laid me on the bed with surprising gentleness, his body covering mine. I wrapped my legs around his waist, drawing him in. "Tell me to stop," he said, his voice strained with desire he could barely contain. "Tell me you do not want this, and I will leave. I will sleep on the sofa. We will act like this did not happen. But if you do not tell me to stop, you belong to me." The ownership in his voice should have set off alarms. Instead, it ignited a fire deep inside me. No more dinners with stockbrokers. No more pretending this connection between us does not exist. Mine, Lily, in every single way that counts. "Yours," I consented. He groaned, his control finally breaking apart completely. What happened next was everything I had dreamed of, but also completely different. Lorenzo was demanding yet considerate, rough yet careful. He took what he desired while ensuring I received what I needed. He learned my body with the same focus he applied to everything, committing to memory every one of my reactions, every sound I uttered. And when I finally came apart in his arms, he captured my cries with his kiss, following me over the edge with my name on his lips. Later, we were tangled in his sheets. My head rested on his chest, while his fingers drew idle shapes on my shoulder. The city lights sparkled outside, but inside his room, the entire world felt wonderfully small and secure. "What is next?" I asked softly. Lorenzo was quiet for a second. "Now, everything is different. You will move in here. You will have a security team 24/7. You will not take the subway anymore. No more staying late by yourself at your apartment. You will stay close so I can keep you safe. That feels like a beautiful prison. It is the price of being with me." His arms grew tighter around me. "I will not apologize for protecting you. I should have argued. I should have demanded to keep my freedom." But Tyler's cold offer was still sharp in my memory, a reminder that I was now in Lorenzo's world, by choice or not. The only real question was if I would face its dangers by myself, or with him protecting me. What about my job? I asked. I can hardly be your secretary and also your whatever this is. Girlfriend, he finished for me. You are my girlfriend, and you will keep your job if you want. I enjoy having you near. Although I might have to hire another secretary for the actual filing, since I intend to spend much of my time distracting you. In spite of everything, I smiled into his chest. That is very professional. I am many things, tesoro. Professional is not always one of them. The Italian term of endearment made my heart flutter. What does it mean? Treasure. Because that is what you are, rare and priceless and deserving of protection. He kissed the top of my head. Get some rest. We have much to talk about tomorrow, and I must deal with the Monroe situation. The thought of Tyler sent a wave of cold through me. What are you planning to do to him? Nothing that lasts, Lorenzo promised. I will just make it absolutely clear that you are under my protection. Any further attempts to use you against me will bring about terrible consequences. Lorenzo, please. This is how my world functions, Lily. Actions lead to consequences. He attempted to use you. Now he will pay. His voice was still smooth as silk. But because you are asking me to hold back, I will. This time for you. It should have upset me more, the casual way he talked about threatening others. But I was so tired, and the steady beat of Lorenzo's heart under my ear was comforting. In his arms, in his bed, I felt more secure than I had in a very long time. As I fell asleep, I heard him whisper something in Italian. It was too soft and fast for me to understand, but I could have sworn it was a prayer. I woke up to sunlight pouring through strange windows and the scent of brewing coffee. For a second, I had no idea where I was. This was not my small apartment in Queens. The bed was far too big, the sheets too luxurious, the view too amazing. Then the memories came flooding back. Lorenzo, the kiss, and all that came after. I sat up, pulling the sheet to my chest, and saw a note on the pillow next to me in Lorenzo's fine handwriting. Had to take care of business. There is coffee in the kitchen. Do not even consider leaving this apartment without security. He was all business, even in his love notes. Some things never did change. I found one of his shirts, a white one that came down to my mid-thigh, and walked barefoot to the kitchen. He was true to his word. Fresh coffee was waiting in a fancy machine that likely cost more than my entire car. While I poured a cup, I saw my reflection. I was barefoot, dressed in Lorenzo Vitali's shirt, my hair a mess from his hands, my lips still puffy from his kisses. I looked completely undone. I looked happy. I looked terrified. This was real. It was not some daydream about an office crush that I could ignore. Lorenzo had claimed me, and in his world, that sort of claim always had repercussions. My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. Lorenzo's security team must have gotten it from my purse. Messages were pouring in. 3 were from Sophia, asking me how the date had gone. 2 were from a number I did not recognize that made my blood freeze. Last night was a mistake. We need to talk, Tyler. Then 5 minutes after that, do not make things worse than they need to be. My family can ruin your life. I was just staring at the texts, wondering if I should tell Lorenzo or deal with it on my own, when the penthouse door swung open. Lorenzo walked in. He was still in last night's clothes but looked perfect anyway. His gaze locked onto me at once, and a dark, possessive look came into his eyes. "Good morning," he said as he closed the distance between us. He held my face in his hands and gave me a long kiss. "You are wearing my shirt." I did not have another option. Someone tore my dress. "I will get you 10 more. His thumb brushed against my lower lip. "Although I like you better this way, marked as mine." "So possessive," I whispered against his mouth, but I was smiling. "You do not know the half of it." He drew back a little, his face becoming serious. "Tyler texted you. It was not a question." Of course he was aware. "You are having my phone watched." "I am protecting you," he corrected me. "There is a difference." And yes, I read the texts. Marco is already taking care of it. Taking care of it how? Lorenzo's smile was icy. Tyler Monroe was about to have a very difficult conversation with his father. He was going to learn why you never threaten a woman under my protection. By nightfall, his entire family would know your name and know to stay away. The violence hidden just beneath Lorenzo's calm exterior should have scared me. But it did not. I was thankful for it. Tyler's threats had shaken me badly, more than I would ever say out loud. Knowing Lorenzo was dealing with it was the only reason I could finally catch my breath. I still have no clothes, I reminded him, and I need to get to work. The office is a mess without me. It is handled. Marco sent your assistant Rosa to your apartment. She is packing a bag for you and should be here in less than an hour. He led me toward the kitchen and helped me onto a stool. And you are taking the day off. We have security measures to discuss. Lorenzo, I cannot just disappear from work. You are with the boss now. You can do what you please. He moved through the kitchen with an unexpected ease, gathering ingredients for breakfast. After the stress from last night, you need a day to recover. I watched him crack eggs into a bowl. It was hard to see him as both the cold man I worked for and this caring person in front of me. You know how to cook? My mother made sure all her children learned. She taught us that depending on anyone for your own survival was a critical weakness. His face softened as he remembered her. She also believed the fastest way to someone's heart was with food, but she meant it in a more romantic way. Tell me about your mother. I had only heard him speak of her briefly before. It was always with a deep sadness that told me the wound was still fresh. Lorenzo paused, whisking the eggs in silence for a moment. She was a small woman, not even 5 feet tall, but she was fierce. When she entered a room, she commanded everyone's attention. She managed the family's legitimate businesses, the restaurants, and the import company. My father handled the other side of things. He poured the eggs into a hot skillet. She passed away when I was 23. It was a heart attack, completely unexpected. One day she was yelling at me about a girl I was dating. The next, she was simply gone. I am so sorry. I was too. I still am. He slid the finished omelet onto a plate with toast and fruit. She would have admired you. She would have liked your stubbornness, and that you refused to be scared. She would not have liked you working for me, though. No, he said, placing the plate in front of me. She would have hated that. But she would have respected you for surviving 6 months in my office without quitting or trying to kill me. That requires a very rare kind of strength. I took a bite. It was cooked perfectly. This is amazing. How did you know I love mushrooms and Gruyere? Because I notice things about you, Tesoro. I always have. He leaned on the counter, holding his coffee, watching me with a satisfied look. And that is how I know you are worried about more than Tyler's messages. He was right. I hate how well he can read me. I am worried about this, about us. Your life is not safe, Lorenzo. No, it is not. But you have been a part of my world for 6 months, even before we were together. The only difference now is that I can protect you out in the open, not from a distance. He put his cup down and came to stand in front of me. I understand what this means for you. The danger, the attention, the risk that my enemies will use you to hurt me. If you want to leave, I will make you disappear. You will get a new name, a new life, and full protection somewhere they could never find you. The offer should have been a relief, a way out. But the thought of never seeing Lorenzo again, of never feeling his touch or hearing his voice, created a painful ache in my chest. And if you do not want to leave, you will stay here. I can keep you safe in this house. You can keep your job, but we must be careful at the office. And you have to accept that you belong to me now, in all the ways that count. His hands rested on my hips, pulling me from the stool. You must accept the bodyguards, the security, and the new limits on your life. Your safety is more important to me than your freedom. That is a heavy price. I know. But I am a selfish man, Lily. I have wanted you since you first walked into my office. Now that you are here, I will not lose you. His forehead touched mine. Just tell me you will stay. I should have thought about it longer. I should have been more logical. Instead, the words came out on their own. I will stay. But I have conditions. A small smile touched his lips. I expected nothing less. Name them. First, I continue working. I will not be a kept woman, Lorenzo. I need my own purpose. Agreed. Second, you do not make choices about my safety without telling me why. I am not some child who needs to be shielded from everything. That is something we can discuss. If the threat is immediate, then you will tell me everything as soon as the danger has passed. I met his eyes. I mean it. I can live with a hard truth. I cannot live with being kept in the dark. He thought for a second, then gave a slow nod. Fair enough. What is the next one? Third, no secrets. I can handle the worst news, but I will not tolerate a lie. I can agree to that. His hands moved up my back. Are there any other demands? Only one. I wrapped my fingers in his hair and pulled his face toward mine. You need to remember that I am here because I choose to be, not because I am trapped. The second this feels like a cage, I am gone. I saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. I cannot promise it will always feel easy. My world has rules I cannot change, but I can promise I will never hold you here against your will. If you ever want to walk away, I will let you. You are a liar, I whispered. You would follow me to the end of the world. Probably, he conceded. But I would convince you to come back on your own. Before I could answer, his phone buzzed on the counter. He looked at the screen and his face grew dark. Marco says the Monroe situation has gotten worse. Worse? How? Lorenzo's jaw was tight. Vincent Monroe wants a meeting. Tonight. He says he wants to discuss our shared interests and the misunderstanding with his son. Lorenzo looked at me, his eyes cold and calculating. He is going to try to buy his way out of this. He will offer money for what Tyler did. And you will say no? I am going to make him understand that if he or his family ever contacts you again, it means war. His voice was empty of all emotion. The mob boss was back. Then I will make the entire Monroe family realize that targeting you was the single greatest mistake of their lives. A knock on the door made us both freeze. Lorenzo's hand went to the gun I knew was tucked behind his back. Then he relaxed. That will be Rosa with your things. He was not wrong. His assistant came in carrying 2 suitcases and a few shopping bags. Miss Morgan. She offered me a small, knowing smile. I think I was able to pack everything you might need. Please let me know if I missed anything. Thank you, Rosa. I felt a wave of embarrassment. She had just found me in Lorenzo's home, wearing his shirt, but she acted like it was perfectly normal for the boss to start dating his secretary. After she was gone, I carried the bags to the guest room to get dressed. I tried to ignore Lorenzo as he followed me, leaning in the doorway, watching me with intense, hungry eyes. You are very distracting, I told him as I pulled out a pair of jeans. That is my goal. He crossed the room in 2 steps and turned me around to face him. You are not sleeping in the guest room. Lorenzo, you are mine now, Lily. That means you sleep with me. You wake up with me. I will know you are safe every single night. His hands cupped my face. I need that. I need you here with me. That raw honesty was my undoing. Okay, but you better not steal all the blankets. A true smile finally broke across his face, changing his entire expression. I will promise no such thing. I am Italian. We are territorial creatures, especially when it comes to our blankets. The rest of the day was strangely peaceful. Lorenzo worked from his study while I explored the apartment, trying to accept my new life. Every hour or so, he would come find me and pull me into a deep kiss that left me dizzy. As night fell, the mood changed. The meeting with Vincent Monroe was set for 9 o'clock. It would be at one of Lorenzo's restaurants, a neutral place with his own security. I saw the tension return to his shoulders and the coldness settle back into his eyes. I want to go with you, I said while he was getting ready. Lorenzo stopped what he was doing. He was checking his gun. Absolutely not. They are going to be talking about me. I have a right to be there. Lily, These meetings are not safe. I will not let you walk into danger. I am already in danger. I stood my ground, crossing my arms over my chest. Tyler came after me. His father wants to make a deal about me. I deserve to hear what he has to say. Lorenzo stared at me for a long time. To my surprise, he finally nodded. Fine. But you will not speak unless I give you permission. And if something goes wrong, you will do exactly what Marco tells you to do. Do you understand? I understand. An hour later, our car stopped in front of Salvatore, an expensive Italian restaurant Lorenzo owned in Manhattan. The restaurant was closed for the night, and I saw his men standing guard at every door. When we stepped inside, I felt every eye in the room turn to me. They all knew the boss had brought a woman to a private meeting. Vincent Monroe was waiting at a large table in the middle of the room. He had 2 bodyguards with him. He looked to be in his early 60s, with silver hair and cold blue eyes that studied me with a predator's gaze as we walked toward him. Vital, Lorenzo was greeted by the man, but his eyes stayed locked on me. He said I must be the girl causing the problems. Lorenzo's voice was ice. This is Lily Morgan. His hand was firm on my back. She is my girlfriend, and she is why we are here. Vincent's smile was empty. Your son showed poor judgment. Tyler was only trying to do business. His approach was aggressive, maybe, but his goals were professional. Lorenzo's tone was like silk pulled over a blade. His goal was to make my girlfriend spy on me. That is not business, Vincent. That is an act of war. Vincent said not to be so quick. Let me be perfectly clear. Lorenzo leaned in. Miss Morgan is protected by me. If you try to contact her again, or use her, or even look at her incorrectly, there will be consequences. They will be severe. Vincent's jaw went tight. You are not being reasonable. It was a simple mistake. It was no mistake. Your family used her to get to me. That cannot be forgiven. Lorenzo's hand went to his side. I knew he was touching the gun he carried. This is your one and only warning. The air in the room grew thick. Vincent's men shifted, their hands moving toward their own weapons. Lorenzo's security team closed in, forming a shield around us. Then Vincent smiled, a look that sent a chill through my bones. You have changed, Vital. A woman is making you emotional. She is making you weak. Be careful, Lorenzo said, his voice low. The threat in that one word was absolute. You are seconds away from discovering how weak I am. Vincent raised his hands as if to surrender. I am just saying this reaction is too much. Tyler made a move on a beautiful woman. You have claimed her. You should accept my apology so we can move on. I can offer money for the trouble. I do not want your money, Vincent. I want your promise that your family will leave Lily alone. I want you to tell every organization in this city that she is untouchable. And if I say no? Lorenzo's smile was terrifying. Then we have a war. I will take apart everything you have ever built. I will start with your docks and end with your son's kneecaps. The raw threat should have horrified me. Instead, a part of me felt moved by his ferocity. He absolutely refused to let anyone harm me. Vincent stared at Lorenzo for a long time, weighing his choices. He finally sighed. Fine. You have my word. The Monroe family will not go near Miss Morgan. We will make it known she is under vital protection. A smart move. Lorenzo's hand tightened on my back. Now leave my restaurant. We watched them go. The tension in the room slowly faded. The moment the door shut, Lorenzo turned to me and held my face in his hands. Are you all right? I am fine. That was... I struggled for a word. Intense. He said that was him being restrained. If you were not here, I would have shot him for calling you a weakness. He rested his forehead against mine. You are not a weakness, Toro. You are my strength. You are the reason I wake up every day trying to build a better world. My heart ached at his words. Lorenzo, I know this is too soon. I know we are going too fast, but I have never felt this way about anyone. I would burn the world down to keep you safe. His thumb brushed my cheek. I would give all of this up, the power, the empire, All of it, if you just asked. Do not, I whispered. Do not say things like that. Why not? Because you make me believe in things that are not possible, like a happy ending for people like you. What if I told you I am making us possible, that I have spent years making my companies legitimate to get away from the violence? He pulled back to look at me. I did not tell you because I did not want you to think it was for you. The truth is, you made my plans urgent. You made me want a future with my empire and the woman I love. The words felt raw and honest between us. You love me, and it scares me. His voice was thick with emotion. I have done awful things, Lily. I have hurt people. I have made choices that follow me. But with you, I want to be a better man. I want to be worthy of you. I kissed him. I put everything I could not say into that kiss. We broke apart, breathing heavily. Take me home, I whispered, with pleasure. The ride to the penthouse was full of unspoken energy. Lorenzo kept his warm, possessive hand on my leg. He kept looking at me with dark eyes that promised what would happen when we were alone. The second we were inside, he had me against the door, his mouth on mine with a desperate fire. I wrapped my legs around him as he carried me to the bedroom, leaving our clothes behind us. Mine, he growled into my neck. I gasped when his teeth grazed my skin. Yours, I agreed. He groaned and lowered me to the bed. He was urgent but surprisingly gentle. This time was different than the first. It was slower, more focused. Lorenzo took his time to learn my body. He found what made me gasp and what made me cry out. When he finally brought us together, it felt like something clicked into place. We were two parts of a whole that were always meant to be one. Later, we were tangled in the sheets. His fingers drew circles on my skin. I asked the question that had been bothering me. What happens if Vincent breaks his promise? Lorenzo's hand stopped. Then I keep mine. War. How many people will die? Too many. His voice was grim. That is why I made a threat he would believe. Vincent Monroe is a businessman above all else. He will calculate the cost of going after you versus the cost of a war with me. He will see it is not worth the risk. And if he does not, then I protect what is mine, no matter what it costs. He turned to face me. His look was serious. I will not lie to you, Lily. My life is violent. People get hurt. Lines are crossed. If you are with me, you will see and hear things you can never forget. Are you certain you can live with that? I remembered Tyler's cold offer and Vincent's hungry eyes. They saw me as a pawn. Lorenzo's world was dangerous, but he was honest. He saw me as more than a tool. I am sure, I said at last. But you have to promise me one thing. Anything. Do not let it swallow you whole. The violence, the power, the control. Do not lose yourself so completely that the man I fell for is gone. I saw a flash of vulnerability in his eyes. You fell for me? I fell somewhere between you being an insufferable tyrant and surprisingly kind. I touched his jaw, feeling the roughness of his stubble. It is probably the most dangerous thing I have ever done. It is definitely the most dangerous thing you have ever done. His smile was aimed at himself. But I promise you, I will try to stay human for you. I will try to remember there is more to life than fighting for power and territory. That is all I ask. We fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms. The city lights made patterns on the walls. For the first time since coming to New York, I felt like I was home, not in a place, but with a person. The next morning, a new pattern began. Lorenzo made coffee. I showered. We ate breakfast together, then rode to the office. Marco drove while we went over the day's plans. At work, we kept a professional space between us. But I would catch him watching me with a heat in his eyes that promised what would happen later. It should have been strange, moving from boss and secretary to lovers. But it worked. Our teasing had new meanings. The light touches we shared were now filled with promise. When we were alone in his office, he would pull me into his lap. He would kiss me until we forgot about professional lines. "We are terrible at being discreet," I said one afternoon, fixing my shirt after a heated session on his desk. "I do not care." Lorenzo fixed his tie. He looked very pleased. "Let them talk. Let all of them know you are mine." "So possessive. You like it." I could not say he was wrong. A peaceful week went by. There were no more threats from the Monroes. There was no more danger in the night. There was only work, and then Lorenzo's bed. I let myself hope that we could make it work, that love could exist in his dark world. And then it all fell apart. I was in Lorenzo's office putting files in order when Marco rushed in. He did not knock. His face was a mask of stone. "Boss, we have a situation." Lorenzo glanced up from his computer. "What kind of situation?" "Vincent Monroe is dead. He was shot outside of his house 2 hours ago." Marco's eyes moved to me. "And someone is spreading the word that we did it." All the color left Lorenzo's face. "What?" "It was not us, was it?" I asked. I knew the answer. Lorenzo was with me all night and all morning. It was impossible. Of course, it was not us. Lorenzo was already on his feet, grabbing his phone. "But someone wants it to look like us. Marco, get our lawyers ready. Find out who is spreading these lies." "There is more," Marco said, his voice low. "Tyler Monroe is calling for model revenge. He is gathering the other families, claiming you broke the peace treaty. He says you murdered his father in cold blood." Lorenzo's jaw went rigid. "He is using this as an excuse to ignite the war we managed to avoid." "Or someone else killed Vincent and framed us to start that war," I said, giving voice to our shared fear. "Who gains the most if you and the Monroes wipe each other out? At least a half-dozen other families?" Lorenzo combed his fingers through his hair, a rare sign of his frustration. "And every one of them would love to watch us destroy each other." "What is our next move?" I asked. Lorenzo turned to me, and for the first time I knew him, I saw true fear in his eyes. It was not for himself. It was for me. "We prepare for war." The following 72 hours were a fog of stress and planning. Lorenzo took me to a safe house. It was a reinforced apartment in a building he owned, with armed men at every door. I despised being trapped, but I knew it was necessary. If Tyler Monroe was after vengeance, I would be his first stop. Lorenzo came by whenever he could. He was always flanked by guards, and he looked more worn out each time I saw him. The pressure of handling a crisis while keeping me protected was wearing him down. "You need to eat," I told him one night. I watched him move food around on his plate, leaving it untouched. "You will not be any good if you collapse from exhaustion. I will eat when this is done." But he ate a bite just for me. "We are getting close to finding out who really killed Vincent. Once we have the evidence, we can prove to the other families that we are being set up. And if Tyler ignores the proof, if all he wants is a reason to attack you, then I will give him the fight he is looking for." Lorenzo's face was cold. "But it will be on my terms, not his." The break in the case came 3 days after Vincent's murder. Marco had found the real assassin. He was a professional hired by the Russo family, one of Lorenzo's lesser rivals. They had killed Vincent and planted clues that pointed to Lorenzo. They hoped to start a war that would get rid of both powerful families. The evidence was solid. There were phone logs, money transfers, and witness accounts. Lorenzo scheduled a meeting with all the major families, presenting his findings with Marco and his legal team at his side. I watched on a secure video monitor from the safe house. My heart pounded in my chest as Lorenzo presented his argument. Tyler Monroe remained completely still through the whole thing. After Lorenzo was done, Tyler got to his feet. "Even if this is true, nothing changes. My father is gone, and your world is the reason. Someone must pay for that." "Then let the Russos pay," Lorenzo said, his voice like ice. "They killed your father and tried to blame me. They played you so you would call for my death. Are you really going to let them succeed with that?" The other family leaders started talking among themselves, swayed by the proof. Tyler's supporters were backing away, one after another. They knew that going after Lorenzo now would make them seem foolish or even involved. Finally, Tyler fell back into his seat. Fine. We will deal with the Russos. But this is not finished, Vitale. My family has a long memory. So does mine, Lorenzo answered calmly. Do not forget it. The meeting was over, and I slumped in my chair, overcome with relief. Things were not perfect. Tyler was still angry. The Russos would have to answer for what they did. But a full-scale war had been stopped. Lorenzo was safe. He came to the safe house later that night. He looked exhausted but relieved. I met him as he walked in, throwing my arms around him before he could speak. We just held each other for a long moment, feeling the tension finally fade. It is over, he whispered into my hair. You can come home now. This was never about the apartment, Lorenzo. I am always home when I am with you. He pulled away to look at me, his eyes gentle with feeling. How did I ever get this lucky? I ask myself the same thing. I gave him a light kiss. Although, I think it might be because of my excellent coffee-making abilities. He laughed, a sound made rough by days of stress. That must be it. We returned to the penthouse that night. For the first time in days, it felt like I could finally take a deep breath. The immediate threat was gone. We had made it through, but Lorenzo's world had revealed its true nature. I knew it was just a matter of time before another danger appeared. 1 month later, life settled into a new kind of normal. I went back to my job, but now everyone knew I was Lorenzo's girlfriend. Some of his men treated me with a new level of respect. Others showed a poorly hidden disapproval. I did not care. I had Lorenzo. I had work that mattered to me. I had a life that had meaning, even with all its risks. We were in his office one afternoon, when I finally made a decision that had been growing for weeks. I want to learn. Lorenzo glanced up from his desk. Learn what? Your world. The way it operates. Who the main people are. What all the rules are. I rested against his desk. If I am going to be a part of your life, I have to understand the game. I need to anticipate the moves before they are made. He watched me for a long time. It is not too late to leave, you know. You could still pick a safe, normal life. I am choosing you. You are my normal now. I met his gaze without wavering. Teach me. So, he did. Over the next few months, Lorenzo taught me about the intricate politics of his life. I learned which families were allies, which were enemies, and which were just waiting for a chance to attack. I learned to spot the small cues in meetings, to grasp the significance of certain words and actions. It was like picking up a new language, one where what was left unsaid was often more important than words. Respect was a form of currency, just as vital as cash. Lorenzo was a patient instructor. He never condescended to me and always took my questions with seriousness. Slowly, I transformed from just his girlfriend who needed to be protected. I became his partner. He started to ask for my opinion on strategy, and he valued what I had to say. You are good at this, he told me one night after I had accurately guessed a rival's strategy. Frighteningly good. I had a very good teacher. I snuggled against his side on the sofa. I pay close attention. That you do. His arm wrapped more tightly around me. I have been thinking about our future. About what might happen when I am ready to step away from the more hazardous parts of my work. About who could take over in a way that keeps our power but lessens the conflict. He looked down at me. About whether you would ever think about being more than my girlfriend. My heart skipped a beat. Lorenzo, I am not proposing. Not yet. His thumb gently brushed my shoulder. But I need you to know that when I do, and I will, it will be about more than just love. It will be about a partnership. About creating something together that is more powerful than either of us could be alone. That almost sounds like a mafia marriage proposal. That is because it is. He turned me so I was facing him. In my world, marriage is about alliances and partnerships just as much as it is about love. I want all of that with you, Lily. I want to join our lives in every single way that is important. I should have been terrified by how serious his words were. Instead, a feeling of calm settled deep inside me, a certainty I had never felt. Ask me. Not yet. He kissed me gently. When I ask you to marry me, it will be perfect. It will be a moment that is worthy of the woman who turned my life upside down by being impossible to overlook and even more difficult to resist. 6 months after our first night in the red dress, Lorenzo brought me back to Richie's restaurant. It was the place where our first date had been a disaster, but this time, the entire restaurant was reserved just for us. Candles were lit on every table. A string quartet played quietly in the corner. And when Lorenzo got down on one knee next to my chair with a velvet box in his hand, I knew this was the perfect moment he had talked about. Lily Morgan, he started, his voice firm despite the emotion I could see in his eyes. You came into my life wearing sensible shoes and a cheap suit, completely unimpressed with me. You called me dramatic. You stole my coffee. You made me laugh when I thought I had forgotten how. And somewhere between your sarcasm and your sharp replies, I fell completely and hopelessly in love with you. Tears were already falling down my cheeks. I cannot promise you that you will always be safe. My world is too dangerous. I cannot promise you a simple life. My life is just too complex. His thumb caressed my hand. But I can promise you everything that I am. My heart, my loyalty, my protection, and my partnership in making something better than what we had before. Marry me, tesoro. Be my wife, my partner, my everything. Yes. I choked out through my tears. Yes. You impossible, demanding, incredible man. Yes. He placed the ring on my finger. It was a breathtaking emerald-cut diamond with smaller stones on each side, elegant and somehow just right. Then he got up, drew me into his arms, and kissed me as the music from the quartet rose in a triumphant swell. I love you, he whispered against my lips. My Lily, my treasure, my home. And I love you, I answered. My Lorenzo, my impossible decision, my perfect danger. We were married 3 months after that in a quiet ceremony that joined our two worlds. His family and mine, his business partners and my friends, the lawful and the not so lawful. My father escorted me down the aisle, looking a little stunned by the whole situation. My mother wept through the entire service. But when Lorenzo held my hands and made his vows to me in both English and Italian, his voice cracking just a little on the promises, nothing else mattered. Not the risk, not the complications, not the gossip about what I was stepping into. The only thing that mattered was how he looked at me, as if I were his salvation. As if I were a woman who had found a man living in darkness and brought him into the light. Our first dance was to an Italian love song that his mother used to love. Lorenzo held me, whispering the translation in my ear. You are my sun, my moon, my stars. I am lost in darkness without you. I smiled against his chest. Then it is a good thing I am here to light your way, I teased. He laughed, spinning me across the dance floor. As we left for our honeymoon in Italy, I looked back at the reception. What an unlikely gathering of people, all brought together by one accidental text. Any regrets? Lorenzo asked, seeing my expression. I turned to this dangerous, powerful man who protected my heart so fiercely. Only one. I should have worn the red dress more often. It is clearly magical. That dress was a torment, he said, his hands finding my waist and pulling me close. To see you walk out in it, preparing for another man. I wanted to lock you in my penthouse and never let you leave. I smiled, always so possessive. He gave me a thorough kiss, ignoring the cheers from the last guests. But you love it. I love you, I corrected him. The rest is just a bonus. 6 months ago he had demanded, his voice full of jealousy. Where are you going in that dress? I finally had the answer. I was home. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful stories and valuable life lessons.